And good morning once again. Mark Conter at the Messer Financial Office here today. And again, it's my pleasure to bring you a sales training type of webinar regarding life insurance. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started today. Of course, make sure your phones are on mute, although we should have everyone muted out from this end. We'll also ask that you use the box in the column on the right of your screen for questions so that we can address those questions when we get near the end of the presentation. And this morning, I'm very pleased to bring to you a person who's been in the life insurance industry for over 30 years. And he's going to discuss with you the case study of individual opportunities with a client. We're going to have a make-believe client. And with that in mind, I'll turn the presentation over now to myself. So here we go. I'm going to do a case study this morning. And as the screen indicates, what we want to do is determine what might be the best fit and the correct product for our client. And in today's presentation, know that as you gather the information, and you're trying to determine the product and what the best fit may be for that client, you're going to come to a question yourself that information may somehow seem overwhelming. And even though that might be the case, a lot of things are going to work in your favor in how we're going to get to that basic determination. So the first thing, of course, we're going to do is we're going to have gathered the necessary information. If you've been with us in the past, you've had the opportunity to learn about a good personal health questionnaire that we use for life insurance. And when you're filling that questionnaire out, it could be done in a couple of ways. Number one, it could be done over the phone when you're talking with your prospective client, who should be, in that case, someone that you've gotten to know, perhaps because you've done business with them on the health side. Perhaps they're a direct referral to you from another person. As I've indicated at the top on this one, I'm showing a John Williams. So we're going to assume that Mr. Williams is a insurance person, probably someone who's in the PC business and doesn't get involved in life insurance, whom I've established a working relationship with. And I'm considering him, of course, the opportunistic person that brought to me a referral. And again, as I'm working on the form, if I'm working with the client on the phone, I'm probably going to get some of this information, but probably not all of it. Probably the majority of this information is going to be attained at the very first meeting. So we're on the phone, we get some basics, we find out who we're working with, perhaps we get a date of birth, we definitely need an address, phone numbers, and email address so that we can make those communications as necessary going forward. And we structure a time. In this case, we're saying that we're going to go out and meet this family on Thursday, and we're going to be doing it in the evening because we have a working household. So we're going to catch them at a time when they're both home during the week. And when we go into the home, and we're going to get into more of the detail, it's going to be important, of course, to get as much detail as you possibly can, because we're then going to turn that information over to our underwriting side of our business. And again, hopefully you've been with us from the beginning. And we've gone through a case on underwriting and given you some tools to use to develop that underwriting in the future. If you have not, the nice thing about our program is everything is recorded. You can go back over to our website, themesserfinancial.com. You can go over to our agent resources at the top of the screen, and you can let that open up and find the Learning Center, Messer Learning Center, and which when you open that, it's going to show new, and that's what you want to click on, the new developed information. And in that, you're going to see all of the webinars that we've done from the very beginning this year. So if you need to go back and review some of the information to get familiar with it, or you haven't seen it before, please go ahead and do that. But again, what's going to be very important, of course, is that we gather all the pertinent information. As we're finding out in this case, both of our clients are non-tobacco. Both of them have what would be considered rather excellent health. As you can see, there's no issues going on with them, and they have no medications. So we're very fortunate in this case that we have people that are going to easily qualify, provided, again, all the information that we gather is correct. That's always the tricky part. There are times when you work with a client and everything seems to be going smoothly, and some pertinent information, perhaps of their health, they chose not to bring to your attention, and it comes out in the underwriting process, and then you're kind of doing a little backpedaling to make things work. But anyway, we're going to assume this gentleman, age 35, and his wife, age 33, are in excellent health. They've had no hospitalizations in the past 10 years, other than, it's not showing on the screen, as you'll see at the very bottom, we've got 2 children, and 7 and 5. So in the past 10 years, yes, Louise has been in the hospital to have a baby, but it was not for any other reason, without any complications, so I failed to even address it. Good question in today's market, unfortunately, is to find out if they have a history of any alcohol driving issues, so that DWI, as we've discussed in underwriting before, would appear in the actual request for the vehicle information, and it would have an adverse effect on the ratings. Dangerous sports are good to know about, and also if they have ever filed for bankruptcy. Sometimes that question kind of, people wonder, well, why would you even ask about bankruptcy? I've had clients ask me directly, does it really affect their life insurance? And yes, it does. You'll find out again when we go into the underwriting process in greater detail what type of an effect it can have. So if there is an existing or had been a filing of bankruptcy, you're going to need to gather the information. You're going to know when that bankruptcy was filed, and most importantly, you're going to know if that bankruptcy was discharged, because if it was discharged, it will not have an adverse effect, unless, of course, there's multiple cases. So let's hope we don't go there. We've also simplified this particular case by showing that neither the husband or the wife have current insurance, so we didn't need to get the information there. If, however, they do have a policy, if they have one perhaps at work, they're probably not going to know who the carrier is on that work plan. They might know the face amount, and they really probably won't even know what type of a plan they have, and they have minimal premium. But if they do have an existing policy, which is good, you want to get all the detail you possibly can. And again, whether this is being done as a phone interview because of a contact you've had, or if it's being done face-to-face. Of course, if it's being done face-to-face in your first opportunity, you want to make sure you get every bit of detail. You might even ask them to pull the policy. You might go ahead and get that policy number and add it to the information. And I probably would go as far as to ask for permission to take the policy back to my office for review, unless I find, of course, it's such a simple term policy that there's really nothing to review. Just for me to make some notes, probably some ammunition that I might discover when I'm reviewing that policy that I won't divulge to them, because it might be information I want to use to aid me in my actual closing techniques. But always, again, if there is a policy, you want to make sure you get a chance to see it. What are we going to look for? Well, we're going to look for things like, how old is the policy? When is it due for renewal? When will it expire? Does it have any benefits for conversion? Obviously, what type of a policy it was. Obviously, too, the policy will tell you what rating they had. So if we are dealing with clients that we discover in our health questions do have some health issues now, and they didn't have them because they were given a preferred rating on the policy that they have in their possession, that's a good ammunition you're going to need to know, because obviously when we process them through the underwriting, they're not going to get the preferred rating that we thought or what they had attained in the past. So we're going to be able to need or be able to address that issue in our presentation. We've got 2 children involved here. We've got their dates of birth. And again, as I have always stressed in all of our information sessions, always get a date of birth. It's very, very important in life insurance. Just knowing the age is not enough. And I can only express it to you the number of times that I get calls to assist an agent and they tell me how old someone is and they don't know the date of birth. If you start working your own business and start doing your own illustrating, you're going to recognize how important it is and perhaps have a little bit of better understanding of the frustration that I experience, and make quite clear to the agent that I really am not going to proceed with any type of illustrative work until I have an exact date of birth, because I don't want to have to go back and do it twice because someone was aged up. So again, our personal health questionnaire, which was brought to your attention in an earlier presentation, gathered the information so that we can go forward and recognize the fact that it may seem to you at this very early stage that the information you've gathered might be overwhelming and what you're going to do with it. But just recognize the fact that no matter how great that need is for the coverage that they are going to have, they can only purchase what they qualify for and for what they can afford. And we're going to determine that as we go through in a better detail in our work here today. So again, you've got a form. Hopefully you've printed one out for yourself. Hopefully you've used it. And that brings up the first question that we have for polling today. If we could, please, Rebecca. So what we do need to know today is, have you taken the time? Have you gone in and made a form out and taken it and filled it out yourself just to get accustomed to it? Obviously, that's a pretty important thing to do. Familiarize yourself with something. And it does seem that as we proceed here, a majority have not taken that opportunity yet. Wait for a few more votes here. We've only got half of the people in. Maybe somebody had to go get a cup of coffee. So a little bit better participation here. We're increasing here. We're up to 6 out of 10. 60% basically are in. Looks like we're kind of holding at about that rate now, up to about 70%. So basically today we have determined that greater than half, 60%, have not yet taken out a form and filled it out for yourself. So if you would please, let's go ahead and let's do that in the days to come. And we'll continue now with that presentation. Okay. Again, with emphasis upon the time that you spent with that health questionnaire and reviewing it, you should now be able to recognize what type of health rating we may be involved with. Today's client, again, we're making it pretty simple. We're not showing any issues at all, because again, today we want to make this a case study. We don't want to continue to go back and forth between different processes. But as we look at it again, even though it looks to me that the health is wonderful on both of these clients, I probably would not use anything better than a preferred rating. So again, I'm not going to go to the ultimate preferred best. There are things and circumstances that we don't find out in the basic health questionnaire, which could affect their rating. And the primary one that I see come up most frequently is when your client has a parent or a sibling who before the age of 60 had an experience with perhaps cancer or a heart problem. And because of that being in the family history, it's likely that the majority of companies will never give that client a preferred best, no matter how healthy your client is, because that's in the history. Now, again, we don't know that. So I want to be safe because I don't ever want to put myself in a position where I'm going to present a potential cost of the policy and have it rated better than it's going to come out, in which case, of course, I'm going to embarrass myself. So again, we're going to do our homework. We're going to use the tools available, use the underwriting guidelines that I've given to you before. If you find yourself uncomfortable and you want to call in and get some assistance here at Messer from the producer services department, producer support, or if you want to call in and I'm available, I'll be glad to take the call and help you through that process as we get started on your first cases, because most importantly, we do want to see you be successful. And again, you should be aware that the health issues that you do find will affect that rating. And when those health issues affect the rating, of course, they do affect the premium. So we'll be looking for that as we look at the face amount for the client. What might happen, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but we might be working with $100,000 face value and we're pricing it at preferred, yet they come in with a standard type of rating and the cost is going to be escalated such that we have to perhaps even lower the face value to get the policy to fit within the dollars of the budget allowed. But being aware of these issues and how they will affect them, you want to take that opportunity when you do see something, that being that a type of a health issue that is going to affect that you would have informed them of that. And I don't mean that you're going to get into detail there in the home, but just let them know that that particular health condition could have an adverse effect on the rating. And the reason we want to do that in the early stage, again, without getting into too much detail, is we're going to take advantage of that later on as one of our steps in the actual closing opportunities that we have. So again, you're the professional. The more information you gather, the more ammunition you can put into your bullet belt, the better opportunity you're going to have when you present the information and attain the close to get the application. So again, let's keep that in mind and let's give them a little bit of information, but not too much, and have a reason for it. So next, what we want to do is get into the actual information that we're going to have and how we're going to review that information that we've gathered. So again, looking at that basic health form, we know that we've got a couple and they've got kids. Where are we going to go with that? Well, we've got him 35 and she's 33. We've already mentioned that they both seem to be in relatively good health. The two children, boy and a girl, ages 7 and 5. You can always ask questions about the kids' health. Usually it's not necessary. They are in standard type of health rating, and that's important too to know. Children don't get any special ratings. You don't get a preferred rating, preferred best on a child. They're all going to come in at standard, unless, of course, there is something in their health history that could affect them adversely. And usually the parents are pretty open to bring that to your attention and let you know that that's something you may have to deal with in the immediate results. So again, we've got pretty much basically a good healthy couple and a couple of healthy kids. They own a home. You've discovered this, and we're going to look at that form in just a moment. They've got a balance on their mortgage. They got about 24 years left. We've discovered that he has an income of $60,000 and that she has an income of $40,000. So again, with that information in mind, we also brought to you in just the most recent weeks past a very basic fact finder. And the fact finder has some of the same information that we gathered on the original health questionnaire. Again, we've got their names, their dates of birth. Looks like I got a little error in there on the spouse. That should be March 12th of 1983. Okay. And we've got their height and their weight. Again, we've got the information on the children, their names, and their actual dates of birth. We've got their home address, home phone number. We have asked them some basic financial information. We did discover that mortgage, about $250,000, to which they have a responsible debt of about $1,700 a month. Also, because we are professionals, we're going to ask questions to the effect of, do they have a will? In this case, we've discovered they both do have a will, and we have the dates of those wills determined. If they don't, again, as we talked in the past, you want to be able to start building a relationship with an attorney whom you can go ahead and refer business to, one that can work with them on their wills. And of course, by building that relationship, he too might be able to bring business to you. If you'll note what I've done here on the attorney's name, we've put him in, so Peter Anderson. And I discovered that in my discussions with them, and again, this is a type of a fact finder we're doing in the home. This is definitely not something you're doing over the phone. That their attorney is actually Thomas's, the client's brother. Very important. We also have discovered that they do have an accountant, and the accountant happens to be our spouse Louise's sister. So both the husband and the wife have a family member in the profession of the legal side and the accounting side. Now, why is that going to be important? Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I found this out in the home, I would now have gone to the next step and asked the question, is it common for either his brother or her sister with their professional expertise to be a part of their decision making when it comes to any financial decisions that they make? Moment of silence, get the answer. Okay, what we've just done is we found out if we've got any kind of blocks coming in down the road when we get into our selling mode. If we can eliminate this challenge right now up front in this very easy fact-finding situation, and they are to tell us that, well, you know, my brother's a great guy. He takes care of he took care of our will for us. But no, we don't really rely on him to help us make our personal family decisions. And the same thing with Louisa's sister. I mean, it's great that we've got someone in the family that can take care of our taxes at tax time and take us in the right direction. And she's very knowledgeable. But again, we don't really rely on her. Okay, so what have we done? Obviously, we've eliminated the potential of them coming back and saying to us that they can't make the decision, that they have to talk to their attorney or they have to talk to their accountant. Get that out of the way before it even becomes a factor in the closing modem. Okay, a little bit more information on our client. We find out that Thomas is employed as a salesperson at the local Toyota dealership, and his wife is employed at the community bank. We've picked up the phone numbers from work. Why did we do that? Well, we asked to get those information just in case we should have had a reason with information we needed to gather to call them at their place of business. And of course, you could always ask, is it okay if I do call you at your place of business? Continuing forward on it now, we found out in that fact finder that his income is $60,000 and hers is $40,000. We're going to need that information in just a moment. And again, in the soft pedal effect of gathering this information, there's nothing offensive. If they do ask the question, well, why do you need to know how much I make? You want to be able to be upfront and answer them and let them know that the insurance companies are going to give them a life value, and that life value is going to determine the amount of insurance that they're going to be able to attain for the protection of their family. And one of the factors in determining that life value is your income. So I do need your income to make sure that I can do my job and attain for you the best available policies with the best available face values. So we've also found out that they have no life insurance in force and that we have none from their employer. So they're absolutely naked for protection of the family. And again, they've got 2 kids. So we need to be able to work forward with that in mind. On the second page of that quick little fact finder, and again, there are a number of fact finders that you can find and you can use. The one I'm offering to you is very, very simple. It's enough information to go forward. It allows for additional information going down the road for future business. I did get into, in this particular case, a little bit more financial information. I found out that they have some money in the savings account. Good. They have some small amount in their investments. They have both started an IRA. Wonderful. They own a home valued at about $300,000 that we already know. We found out they have a mortgage of $250,000. The personal property value is around 12. And when I ask people the personal property, it's like, well, how do I determine that? Well, it's what do you think it's worth? I mean, do you have any fine jewelry? Your furnishings in your home, the assets that you may have, or the value that might be still available, and the value of your automobile. But the personal property, just to have an idea, just to try to build up to the bottom line of what their total assets are. Again, this is a very, very simple fact finder. We do determine that they've got loans right now outstanding on both cars. Again, we know they have that mortgage. They've got some charge account bills and a little bit of balance on a credit card. So we know that this total equaling their total liabilities is less than their assets, which is good. So they're in a positive frame, and they should be at this age with the kids. Hopefully they're not negative. And most importantly, in a very simplified way, we found out they had a savings account, and we asked them how much they are putting away every month into their savings. It's $50. Okay, well, that tells us one thing for sure, that they're planners and that they are living within their budget. So it's going to be advantageous to us as well when we go into the further determinations. Again, we found out they did not have any other insurance, but if they did, here's where we would have gathered that detailed information with the name of the company, the policy number if possible, when that policy was issued, the face amount premium, who the beneficiary was. This type of information can do a number of things for you as a professional. Number one, again, we're looking to see if that policy is one that perhaps we could take advantage of a conversion for them, or if we can enhance that policy with benefits today, which we'll talk about in future here, and give them more than what they were currently exposed to for equal to or less perhaps dollars than they were paying. Also with the beneficiary, it might be a time that that comes up and they recognize that, hey, they do need to make some changes. They didn't make anything change to that information when they had the second child. So again, we're just kind of gearing them up to do things that are in the best interest of the family. Most likely, they're not going to have long-term care insurance. You're probably not going to get into any kind of a discussion with them. Obviously, if we're working with people perhaps over the age of 45, 50 plus, we might be able to get into some conversations regarding long-term care. No other insurance from disability, no critical coverage. We find out a little bit about their health insurance, that it's an employer-sponsored plan for both of them. So we recognize that we're perhaps not going to come back to them at another time. Didn't ask the questions, but I could have. Got into the property and casualty for their automobile, for their homeowners. Maybe found out what they pay or who it's with. And again, that could be part of my alignment for building up relationships with other professionals for future use. So with all of this in mind, what we've determined is that their number one priority is to protect their family's current lifestyle. I'll show you a little bit about how we're going to come to that conclusion in just a moment as well. They also have a concern about the future costs of education for those two children. We found out that they are participating in a 401k sponsored through their employer. And in general conversation, they've told us that they need to do more in planning for their own retirement. This will pretty much come out in your basic conversations. As we've said before, one of the most important things about selling is trying to listen more and talk less. And when you open these doors, you're going to find that they will begin to get into that information and tell you more and more about what's happening. We asked them another important question that you'll see in just a moment. Pretty much I just came out and said, hey, well, what would you be comfortable with as an additional expense to your current budget in an effort to protect your family? And we've determined that that's $100. So again, back to that very, very basic form that I gave to you, that basic fact finder, the third page of it asks some relatively simple questions on their planning priority. And we asked them, how important is it for you to protect each other in the lifestyle that you've become accustomed to in the event that one of you were no longer here? And they've made that a very, very high priority. We've also asked them, have they considered what steps they need to take to protect their income? What we're talking about there, of course, is getting into a disability type of situation. And they've said that, yes, it's important, but they wouldn't make that a priority. It's not at the high end. Again, too, in our discussion, they said they were interested in providing for the educational funds of the kids, but at this time, because they're so young, they don't feel that it's making that a major issue either. So they're going to make that one of their lower priorities. But again, too, when we turn back around and we look at it, we say, okay, if we are saving today, are we going to continue to be able to save in the future for that future itself? And that would be, again, not the highest, but somewhat in the middle as a priority. And the same with planning for retirement. We gave it a middle rating, but it might have also been because, again, they're 30 years away from the age-old 65 magic number, so that it's probably not even a medium. It's probably a lower priority. They're not worried about their estate right now because they really don't have an estate to be worried about, and they're not planning for any business continuation issues. But the very last question on this page is probably the most important, and that is, how much do you feel comfortable setting aside every month to achieve your financial objectives? And again, this is a time when we wait, we're quiet, and we let them give us an answer. Now, again, we wanted to make sure we had participation from both the husband and the wife as we're going through this session. And when one of them answers, and let's just say he says, well, I think I'd be comfortable with $100 a month. I would pause just a moment and I would ask, is that for each of you or for both of you? I would also, after he's answered the question with $100 a month, I would ask her, because she is an income earner, do you feel that you could do a little bit more from your current savings to add to that $100 a month? So again, I'm going to try to stretch them as best I can to determine what that final number is, because again, that's part of what we're going to work with as we go into our studies and actually determine the product and the fit. The more obviously we can get that number to be, the more insurance we can help them attain. But even with just this in mind, we're going to keep it simple again today. We're going to say that they feel comfortable with $100 a month in order to help them move forward and protect their family. Now, we're going to step back and we're going to go into another poll question. So I want to ask you to remember the fact that we put his income at about $60,000 and we put hers at $40,000. And based on the classes that we've had in the past, I would ask you then, if we could, Rebecca, let's go to our first polling question. Based on his income, and his income again was $60,000, do you feel that he would qualify for $500,000, 100, 1 million, or 2 million? Okay, participation is growing. People are thinking about it. This is great. All right, we've got almost, again, 70% of the vote in. And what we've got is about 50% our viewers saying million, 40% are saying 500,000, and we've got 10% in the range of about 2 million. So kind of made this a little tricky, because obviously if somebody qualified for 2 million, they qualify for 1 million. If they qualified for 1 million, they can't qualify for 500,000. But we're trying to see how far we can stretch it. And because of the age, because of the income, and again, last week when we had our presentation from North American by Shar, she had a document available to you that was a little easy calculator. And what that document would have determined for you at that time is, based on his age and his income of $60,000, he would have qualified for approximately 30 times. So pretty much all of the answers here are right, okay? he actually would have qualified for a maximum of about 1.8 million. So he certainly would qualify for the 1 million and for the $500,000. It's good to know this because, again, you can recognize and perhaps pat your clients on the back at this point and let them know that the work you're going to do, they'll be very surprised to see how much insurance they qualify for, which is, again, their human life value as determined by the company. Okay, so let's go on and close this one up. And let's go on to the second one, if we could, please. And we've gone ahead and we've turned to the spouse. And again, now we're asking based on her income, which is about $40,000, how much will she qualify for? So again, kind of give you a little bit of clues here. If we're using the fact that she too is young, in her early 30s, she too is working. So we can pretty much figure that she's going to qualify also for about 30 times her income. So kind of giving it away, got about half the votes in here. But with that in mind, okay, we can close this poll off and say that, yes, she's going to qualify for $1 million. Obviously, she would qualify for 750 or 500. So I wouldn't actually put that on the table right now as far as how much for either of them. Just again, that this is information we needed to gather so we can go back and do our justification in order to determine their human life value and how much they're qualified for. Now, again, recognizing as we do right now that perhaps he will qualify for almost 2 million and she will qualify for $1 million, that would be a total household coverage of about $3 million. That might scare them off a little bit, believe it or not, because some people get a little leery when you start talking in the millions like that. And obviously, we're not going to tell them anything right now of what we think, because what we're doing here is we're trying to determine where we're going to take this. And that is that knowing that they're going to qualify for any of these rates that we've put up, we can go ahead and close that poll. The fact is, that's going to work in our best interest as we try to fit what they qualify for to what they can afford. So again, we've answered the question. He qualifies close to the 2 million. She qualifies close to the million. Maybe a simple solution that we're going to find might be meeting them halfway. We might be right in here. We might work on $1 million for him and 750,000 for her. That's pretty important. Again, you're at an advantage at this point. When we've done that, and again, we've determined that that $100 a month is going to be our base point. What we want to do next is look for carriers that we have the confidence in that will provide to this family living benefits. And again, in our selection of carriers today, we're trying to give an additional benefit that other agents in the field might not be offering. So with our relationship with American General Partners, North American and Transamerica, we know that all three of these carriers are going to offer living benefits, much more than what was always the benefit that was provided with any insurance, was for access of an accelerated benefit when someone is determined to have a case that's going to be critical, that they're going to perhaps live less than 12 months or less than 24. most carriers today, almost all of them, I can't even think of any that don't, have that benefit available. And that came up and grew over time. It wasn't with all carriers, but as more and more got aboard, of course, they offered it. Well, we're in that same situation today. There are not a majority of carriers offering the living benefits, but as more and more carriers recognize that they're losing business to the carriers that are offering those benefits, we're going to see more and more carriers offering that to their clients as well. Now, what we're going to do here again is recognize that there are 3 carriers that we want to do this with. I want to ask you once again to take the time in the future as you're getting contracted with carriers to look specifically at these 3 companies because again, we want to take advantage of the fact of the benefits that they're going to offer to their clients and for us. So go ahead and do that on the Messer website. Get your contracting started if you don't have one already with any of these 3 carriers. Also with these 3 carriers, just know that you can begin the process, but you're not really going to get an appointment until you have business. And once you have business, then they're going to actually issue you your agent number. Might be getting a little ahead of myself here, but I also want to bring to your attention that one of the things that'll happen when you go into contract with American General Partners is that they also have a little bit of classwork you have to do online, just a certification. They want you to totally understand the concept of how the critical and chronic benefit is paid from that term life insurance. Now, maybe some of you aren't aware of this yet, but it's the first time in the history of insurance that a term product has a benefit available to the insured without them having to die first for their family to get the benefit. So it really is a big thing. And American General, again, in my personal opinion, have a product that is the best in the way it pays out. So I kind of lean more favorably towards them. But because of that, again, they require you to do a little bit of study work and take their little certification online on their website to show that you have an active working knowledge of how that works. And it is important to know how it works because when we do offer it to our clients, number one, you've got an advantage over any other agent that they perhaps might have met or talked to. You're going to offer them more for their money. Win-win for you. Number two, when that benefit is offered, they are going to want to know, how does this work? And again, it's going to be your responsibility to be able to answer that question. So again, a good working knowledge. We'll talk about how you get that understanding here in just a moment. Remember when we did our work form, we found out too that they did not have disability. So we might want to think about and be prepared to bring up a disability income rider, both in our conversation and presentation later on. But again, another bullet on our belt. So when we go back and work on this case, I'm saying what I want you to work on is a case that shows all of these benefits. Give them the living benefits, give them some disability income rider protection, and most importantly, cover that life insurance to fit within that $100 a month that they are comfortable doing. So again, I know that sounds like an awful lot, but that's the puzzle we're going to try to put together. Because if we can do all of those things and offer them all of these benefits and fit it within the budget that they have, obviously it's going to make our job selling much easier. In fact, it's really going to simplify the fact that when you get down to getting the actual order, that it's just going to be a matter of bringing the paperback across the table or using the electronic form right in their home and starting the application process. Also, one of the things that we want to do is impress upon them the importance of having that coverage on the wife. I'm using the dollar amount here to you guys in general. But again, we're going to try to avoid doing that in the presence of our client with this interview session. But we do want to reinforce the fact how smart it is on their part to be looking at this now to protect the interest of those two children, because we know that's primarily what they're focused on. That's what the whole protection of their current lifestyle is about. But that, of course, it took two of them to get to this point, and they have to recognize the importance of having coverage on both of them as well. And you want to thank them and congratulate them on recognizing the fact that they want to have the best coverage for both of them. So again, you're just kind of giving some warm fuzzies, but you're building your case. Also, what we found out was that they have children. And what we're going to do, because again, they didn't bring it up. We talked a little bit about the future of the children for education, but we really didn't talk about insurance on the children. What we want to do, though, is keep that as another one of our bullets, add that to our work assignment. So we know what we've got. We've got a husband that we're going to look at probably in that middle range of about $1 million. We're going to look to write that policy up with living benefits. We're going to add a disability income rider to it to protect his income for that family for paying for the policy. So do understand what that is all about. We'll do some of that homework as we go further into products. Number two, we're going to look at her. And again, we're going to take that midway point of about $750,000. And again, what we're going to do is perhaps add on that benefit of the disability rider to protect her income to pay for the policy. And what we're going to do on her policy is we're going to add the child rider for approximately $25,000 of benefits, unbeknownst to them, just an additional whammy. Wowie, we've got you here. So what we will have done then by doing those steps is we will have then been able to create for them approximately $1.75 million of life insurance coverage and $25,000 of coverage on the children. And what again we want to do is we want to be able to do that right at that $100 a month. Now that may seem overwhelming to you, but I think what you're going to be again surprised when you go in and start working on this case, that this is going to be something you can do. Now, as a new agent, it's also very important that you realize that there are brochures available, and those brochures can be provided to you from the carrier about the product. So again, let's kind of narrow it down. We're looking at 3 carriers. We're looking at American General Partners. We're looking at North American. We're looking at Transamerica. We want to be able to go over to the product website or over to the company website, and you can produce those brochures. You can either download the PDF of a brochure on the product, if you've got good quality printing equipment in your office, so you can print it out. And the reason I say that is if you're going to present this stuff, don't present it in a tacky black and white fashion that looks like you copied it off the copy machine 100 times. Either do it professionally and print it so that it is in color, or order it, which again, the companies are very pleased to provide you with all of this at no cost, delivered to your door, which is obviously the best. So again, what's going to happen is get yourself appointed with these companies, go back to the website, order some product brochures so that you have them in your portfolio, so you're always ready with the supply to distribute to your clients when you go out and visit. As you get more attuned to what you're doing, you probably never even use one of these brochures, but they are a nice handy crutch, especially when you're new to the business, trying to reinforce the fact that you know what you're doing. I think it really falls to more of the newer agents that use it. But again, they're available to you at no cost with your appointment. So go ahead and get them. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. So what I'm asking you to do is next week, we're going to work on actual illustrative work. And I want you during this week's time to take the time to go out to these websites. If you're familiar with the Messer website quoting tool, great. I want you to work up your own. We're going to do it next week, but I want you to do it, try to do it on your own. Remember, I want you to fill out that health questionnaire on yourself, get used to using it. Maybe even build a case on yourself and your own family. I want you to fill out a fact finder. I didn't put you in the hot seat there, but you need to work on one of those for the ease and being comfortable with it when you're doing it in the home. And then again, what we're going to do is going to ask you to build a case. I want you to build a case again on that male client. He's age 35. We're going to go ahead and do him at preferred. Again, we're going to do $1 million. We're going to add disability income rider. And we're going to use a living benefits type of product. Over on Mama, we've got a 33-year-old. We want to use, again, $750,000. We also want to add the disability income. And most importantly, we want to add that rider for the children of $25,000. Just a little clue or hint here. When you're adding the child rider, the insurance companies are only going to allow you to add it on one of the spouses. So don't try to do it on both because it isn't going to fly. Don't split it out and do 10 on one and 10 on the other because it isn't going to fly. Just take one spouse. In this case, we're going to use Louise. We're going to do $25,000 on her children for the best interest of both of them. That's your homework assignment for next week. Okay, let's see what we've got in the way of questions. One of our agents is enjoying his time. He's joining us today from the Philippines. Aren't you fortunate, Marvel? You're a character. So he just wanted to say hello to everybody out there and let us jealously know that he's in the Philippines enjoying life. Okay. Well, it appears that I don't have any additional questions. It's 10 o'clock. And as we used to always say, in my past life, coming to you here from Messer Financial in the Psychedelic Lounge, fly low and stay out of the radar. Till next week. Oh, and best, by the way, next week it's real important that you know that our webinar will be on Thursday morning. I'm sorry, I apologize in advance. I've had a conflict in my scheduling. So instead of being with me next Wednesday at 9, please be with us. Make that adjustment in your schedule for next Thursday as we do the first part of the usage of the illustration software. We're actually going to do it over a 2-week period of time. I want to be able to use basic software. I want to be able to help you learn to do the very simplest of cases right away, but I also want you to be able to go forward and do more difficult illustrating on more permanent type of products. We're going to do that 2 weeks from now. So next week basics, 2 weeks from now permanent. Again, I've got a couple of questions. One of them being on the assignment. And again, Joe, the assignment is we want to take a 35-year-old male in preferred health. We want to be able to do $1 million face value. We want to include the living benefits. So use one of the 3 carriers. And we also want to be able to include disability income. And then secondly, on the wife, we want to do her 33. Use the birth date as was assigned. It'll still come up 33, but 12/3/1983. And then we want to use 750,000 as the case. We want to do that again with living benefits. And we want to add to hers the disability income rider, as well as $25,000 of child protection. I think that does it for now. Marvel, I'll get back to you with that personal question. So again, everyone, have a great week. Look forward to meeting with you again next Thursday. So that'll be the 18th at 9 a.m. Thank you all. Bye for now.